Hello dear viewer of my channel. Emily is with you. For the most interesting stories, watch the video until the end. Subscribe and like the video, I will be very pleased. I love you all.
Story time about how I'm hooking up with my boss's husband. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It was sending me on Instagram. Let's get this out of the way. Yes, I'm a homewrecker. Am I proud of it? No, but just hear me out. A few years ago, I had moved to a new city and didn't have any friends at all. My goal was to get a job and make some new friends. Luckily, I got a job right away. After working there for a few weeks, I noticed that my boss would get really jealous anytime her husband would come into the store. Here's the reason why. Her husband is super attractive. He's like way more attractive than she is. Anyway, there were a bunch of girls that worked at the store. I wasn't the only one, but it was like some kind of unspoken rule that you never spoke to the boss's husband. After a month of working there, I would avoid him at all cost. But here's the thing, he actually would go out of his way to come say hi to me. At first I thought this was flattering, but then I realized I could be playing with fire. So I decided to be really cold towards him. Well, this didn't work because it actually made him want to talk to me even more. A few days later, I get a text from an unknown number. Can you guess who it is? Yep, it's my boss's husband. In the message, he basically said that if he had done anything wrong to let him know because he didn't want me to feel uncomfortable around him. That's when I told him that none of the girls at the store were allowed to talk to him or even make eye contact with him. And that was the reason why I didn't speak to him. He told me that I must have misunderstood because he's friends with all of the girls who work there, which I knew was not true. The next day I go into work and he actually shows up at lunchtime. I was by myself at the store. It's like he almost knew that I was there by myself, so he decided to come over. And he started flirting. He pretty much complimented everything about me and asked me if I was making friends. Then he asked me for permission to follow me on Instagram. Of course, I was like, yeah, you can follow me. After that, we basically talked on Instagram almost every single day. He would watch and reply to all of my stories. One time I posted a story of me having dinner with some guy, and he replied right away and asked me if I was on a date. I said yes. Then he told me that he was actually jealous. I didn't know how to reply, so I just said LOL. Then he said, what are we gonna do about this? I told him probably nothing because his wife would get upset. Then he said, I've got my ways, don't worry. He asked me to go to the movies and we went, and we basically made out the entire time. After the movie, we sat in his car and he told me that he hated his wife and that he was planning on divorcing her. He was even crying. I mean, I had to believe him. He asked me to keep everything secret, and of course I said yes. I mean, I didn't want to lose my job. This went on for 2 months. One day he calls me and tells me that his wife actually read our messages. Part 2 is up. My boss's husband, aka the guy I'm having an affair with, he calls me up to tell me that she actually saw the text messages between us. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I repeat, this is not my story time. Luckily, he did not save my number under my name. So basically, she saw messages between him and some other girl. He was really freaking out. But that's when I told him this is your way out. According to him, he hated his wife. So I told him this is perfect, just ask her for a divorce. That's when he told me there was no way he would ever divorce her. He told me that she was the only one who made money in the relationship and that if they ever got divorced, she would leave him nothing. He also told me that he was no longer attracted to her, but that the money was just too good and he had to stay in the relationship. At that point, I started feeling really bad. I was under the impression that he absolutely hated her and that she was terrible towards him, but apparently not. Thankfully, she didn't know it was me the one that was messaging him. He actually made up a lie and told her it was some girl from Instagram that he met. When I showed up to work later that day, my boss was in a really bad mood, and I knew why. Suddenly, she tells all of us girls to pull out our phones and open our text messages. My stomach dropped because stupid me had not deleted all the messages. She started going one by one checking everyone's phone, but luckily I was able to delete everything by the time she got to mine. That's when she told us all to go home. As soon as I got in my car, I decided to call him. I told him what had happened and he told me that everything should be under control and that she believes what he said. He asked me if we could meet up and I said yes. I just couldn't resist the temptation. A few days later, I came into work early by mistake. I find him talking to one of the other girls. When he saw me, he literally backed away from her. I instantly got upset and realized that he had probably been having affairs with a bunch of the other girls. I decided to confront the girl that he was talking to and she told me the truth. They had been having an affair for a year now and that he had probably had affairs with all the girls that worked there. No wonder my boss was so paranoid. When I asked him about it, he totally denied it. I kind of want to tell my boss now and just confess everything, but I'd risk losing my job, which pays really well and I actually love. I'm hoping you guys can tell me what to do. Help me. Story time about how my husband left me for my sister and married her 4 days later. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sending me on Instagram. My husband and I have only been married for 2 years. 2 years ago, my sister and I went on vacation. A few days into our trip, we were at a bar and we met this group of guys. My husband was one of those guys. He basically flirted with us the whole time. And I could tell that he didn't know which one of us to choose. So I made it easy for him. I told him that I liked him and that I wanted him and I to go on a date. So that let my sister know that she had to back off. My sister actually ended up hooking up with one of his other friends that night. We all hung out together for the rest of the trip. I started falling in love with him really fast. When the vacation was over, my sister and I went back home. My future husband and I would basically talk on the phone every single day. A few weeks later, he even started talking about moving to my state. I really thought he was totally committing to me because he wanted to move closer to me. Fast forward a few months later, we moved in together. We got engaged, and soon after we got married. My whole family was really happy for me, and my sister was too. My sister ended up being my bridesmaid, and everything was great. She and my fiance ended up spending a lot of time together. I mean, she was helping me plan the wedding, and she was my bridesmaid, so I didn't think anything of it. Fast forward to a year later, I ended up landing a great job. This job had me traveling 2 times out of the week. My husband mostly worked from home. Because I'm such a good wife, I decided to ask my sister to go over to my house and cook for him once in a while. After a few weeks of working my new job, I decided to come home early and I didn't tell my husband. I found him with my sister in the jacuzzi. Part 2 is I walk into my husband and my sister sitting really close in the jacuzzi. Of course, they were both in their bathing suits. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. When they saw me, they basically jumped apart. I could tell they were startled. I stared at them without saying anything for a few seconds. I was angry. That's when my husband jumps out of the jacuzzi and comes to give me a big hug. Side note, he and I never used that jacuzzi. We basically never used it because he never wanted to clean it. And I had even told him that we should just sell it if that was the case. But of course, as soon as my sister comes over, he's willing to clean it so that they can use it together. My sister, of course, jumped out of the jacuzzi too, and she offered to serve me some dinner. And basically, I just told her she could leave. That's when she looked at me with her angry face, which I know very well, and she actually did leave. After that, I had a terrible, terrible feeling in my gut. I knew that something was up right away because they jumped apart really fast. They knew they got caught. Because I traveled so much, I knew that this was probably going to happen again. So I did the only logical thing. I bought a baby cam and synced it to my phone. It basically looked like a table decoration, but it recorded video and sound. I put it above the fireplace in our bedroom. And I also put one in the living room. Of course, my husband didn't notice one bit. What do you know? The same day I left on a trip, my sister shows up. The baby cam alerted me when there was movement in the house. Little did they know I was recording the whole thing. Video and sound. Approximately 2 minutes after she came into the house, they started to kiss. By the way, I was on a train watching this all go down. I wanted to faint. Their faces were basically stuck to each other for 5 minutes. Part 3 is up. I see my husband and my sister full-on kissing. It's as if their faces were stuck to each other for 5 minutes. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. They look so comfortable with each other, which led me to believe that this had started a long time ago. By the way, I'm watching all of this go down through my cell phone. I had installed a baby cam before I left on my next work trip. I recorded the entire thing. I knew they would both deny it unless I had physical proof. I was so enraged, I canceled my work trip. I got on a train back home. I was only 30 minutes away from my house. And yes, I was still watching them the whole time I was going home. I jumped into an Uber and had him drop me off a block away from my house. I didn't want them to know I was nearby. I opened the front door quietly and there they were on the couch, still stuck together. I grabbed my sister by the hair and pulled her over the couch. With the purse that was already in my hand, I started hitting my husband. He then pinned my arms down to my sides and told me to leave the house. You heard that right, he kicked me out. Went straight to my parents' house and showed them the video. Then my dad was so angry we actually ended up going back to my house. But of course my husband didn't let us in. Then he showed me the divorce papers. He told me if I didn't sign them that he would take all of my money because ultimately I did make more money than him. My sister was standing behind him the whole time. My dad and I left, and I don't even know how this happened, but 4 days later they were married. Sister came to my parents' house and told them the news. We fully expected them to be happy for her. We even moved into the house that I basically paid for. Still haven't been able to get all of my things out. Did I go over there and grab my things? Should I sue him? What do you guys think I should do? P.S. My sister's pregnant. That's when I realized that I had fallen in love with my stepdad. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I repeat, this is not my story time. At this point, I was 18 years old. He asked me to come home because he found out that my mom was cheating on him. He asked my mom for the divorce and she said yes. Apparently, my mom was actually going to move in with the guy that she was cheating on my stepdad with, which is a whole other story. My stepdad seemed brokenhearted, but at the same time really relieved. And because of this, we actually started spending more and more time together. Once the dust had settled, I decided to go back to school, which was in another country. And the whole time, my ex-stepdad and I kept in contact. We would talk on the phone almost every single day. Finally, when him and my mom were officially divorced, he actually started changing with me. He started going to the gym and even bought himself a new car. Oh yeah, and he got himself a condo. He started sending me selfies of him in the mirror and showing off his abs and stuff like that. At first, I was like, maybe this is innocent, but then I realized that he was definitely flirting with me. On my 20th birthday, I decided to go home and visit my mom. And yes, I knew that I would be seeing my stepdad. My mom and I had dinner and she told me that my stepdad was actually seeing other women. And this made me extremely jealous. My mom noticed it and asked me if I was upset. I said no, but she kept prying. Finally, I confessed to my own mother that I was in love with her ex-husband. Being the drama queen that my mother is, she instantly started to cry and told me that I was trying to ruin her life. She got up from the table and ran out of the restaurant. After that, my mom did not want to take my phone calls. So instead, I went over to my ex-stepdad's house, and I decided to just come out and tell him everything I felt about him. When I finished talking, he actually smiled and hugged me. He told me to just ignore my mom and that everything was going to be fine. He instantly made me feel so much better. And then he told me that he actually had feelings for me too. I mean, I was so happy, but at the same time, I knew that I couldn't be with him because of my mom. I also mentioned to him that my mom said that he was dating a bunch of other women, and he told me that he had been going out on some dates, but that he only ever thought of me. He then asked me if I wanted to give our relationship a shot. I didn't know what else to say except yes, because I was so happy. Then we became boyfriend and girlfriend secretly. Part 3 is So my ex-stepdad and I began a secret relationship. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I repeat, this is not my story time. At this point, I was 19 years old, and my ex-stepdad was 47. Since my mom was not speaking to me, I decided to send her an email. And I explained to her that I had every intention to date my ex-stepdad. Finally, a few months later, she called me back. Mind you, my mom had cheated on my ex-stepdad, and that's why they got divorced. And she told me that she would accept the relationship. Then out of nowhere, she told me that I should start planning my wedding. Mind you, I had only been dating my ex-stepdad for a little bit. It feels weird calling him my ex-stepdad, so now I'll just call him my boyfriend. Now the problem is I get judgment from my entire family. My aunts and uncles hate my boyfriend, and I'm pretty sure my mom has been telling them that he's actually a cheater when she was the one that cheated. It's been 2 years now, and I'm still with my boyfriend. But he recently asked me if I was open to getting married, and I said yes. Now the problem is I don't know what to do about it. We discussed it at length, and I basically told him that I think we should elope. He tells me that I'll regret it and that I should have my family there, but I know they hate him. I mean, it is a very weird situation, but they don't understand that I didn't grow up with him. I didn't meet him until I was 18 years old. When my mom found out that we were going to get married, she actually started planning the wedding without my consent. She even tried to pick out my wedding dress and the cake. So 2 weeks ago, my boyfriend and I actually eloped. We're married, and literally nobody in my family knows. My mom still thinks she's planning the wedding, and I just don't know how to break it to her that there is no wedding. Should I keep the secret, or should I tell my family? I really need help here. Story time about how my husband is bullying me into getting plastic surgery. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My husband and I have been married for 2 years. I'm in my early 20s and we just had a baby. We're really well off, thankfully, and we have a wonderful life. All things considered, I do have a wonderful husband. He loves me, always wants to be with me, loves our daughter, and is a wonderful dad to her. He's super caring and loves my family as well. The only problem is that he's addicted to Instagram, and he follows a lot of girls that, look fake. One day he started showing me pictures of this one girl. I will not say who she is, but just know that she's a very big influencer who claims to be all natural and totally is not. He asked me if I wanted to get some work done after I had the baby. I told him no because that wasn't even a priority of mine. I was more worried about having our daughter and taking care of her when she was first born. That's when he suggested that I should do what Kylie Jenner did. Kylie Jenner supposedly had her baby and directly after she got her stuff done. I laughed off the idea and he said, "I'm serious." You see, I thought he was joking. I asked him why he wanted me to get that done. He confessed he was afraid that my body was going to look completely different than when we first met. I was shocked because, you're in love with me, not with my body. After I had the baby, he made an appointment with me at a plastic surgeon. Part 2 is up. Without telling me, my husband made an appointment at a plastic surgeon for me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I had told him so many times that I did not want work done on me. I told him I wouldn't go to the appointment. Then he told me that he wanted me to look like the girls on Instagram and that he needed my body to look like it did before the baby. I was shocked. My husband had never been like this before, but his addiction to Instagram was getting that bad. He pulled out his phone and started showing me pictures of girls on Instagram. I told him those were highly edited pictures and he said I don't care. He told me that he probably wouldn't be attracted to me anymore and that's why I needed to get all the work done on my body. I told him that I would never ask him to do anything surgical to his body for my benefit. And he told me that if I had asked him, he would do it in a heartbeat. Then he actually started showing me pictures of Kylie Jenner and Kim Kardashian. He told me that he knew who their doctor was and that I could go to that same doctor. I was more than shocked. I felt sick to my stomach. For those of you who may be wondering, my husband and his family own a very big company. He was born into money. For him, you can buy anything in the world. As the weeks passed by, he kept getting more irritated that I wouldn't say yes. One day he showed me a picture of me that he edited of me to look like Kim Kardashian. Part 3 is up. My husband insisted that I look like Kim Kardashian. Actually even went ahead and edited a picture of me in the shape of Kim Kardashian. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I started to cry instantly and I told him I did not want to get any surgery. He backed off because he knew he hurt my feelings, but just the following day he asked me again. At this point, I didn't know how else to say no. A few days later, we were having a peaceful lunch and suddenly out of nowhere, he asked me what I would do if he found someone that did look like Kim Kardashian. I told him that I would straight up divorce him and that he would never see our daughter again. That's when he got up from the table and left. He basically gave me the silent treatment for 2 days. Finally, I told him that I would not get surgery, but that he could get me a personal trainer to work out. He said that that wasn't enough. Once again, he asked for me to consider it. 2 days ago when I got home, he ordered me a bunch of clothes from Skims. He asked me to try it on, and when I did, he said that I didn't look that bad, but that he still thought I should get some work done. He also told me I should get a tan. At this point, I just don't know what to do. I started a new diet in efforts to lose weight, and I'm working out my butt like crazy. I will never look like Kim Kardashian or Kylie Jenner though. Should I just cave in and get the work done? Or should I just tell my husband no and suffer the consequences? I feel absolutely hopeless.
Story time about how I ghosted my boyfriend of 5 years. I know that sounds so bad, but he was a thief, a liar, and a cheater. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. Like I said, my boyfriend and I have been together for 5 years. We met in college and were basically inseparable for the first 2 years. On our 3rd year of dating, I started working as a personal assistant for a big celebrity in LA. This meant I had to move to LA. You see, we lived in Texas at the time. Well, things got really bad after I moved. He wouldn't take my phone calls, he would totally ignore my text messages, and he would go out all the time. For the first few months, I tried to keep the peace so I wouldn't say anything, but eventually it got to the point where we wouldn't speak for an entire week. Luckily, my best friend still lived in Texas, so I had her follow him around for 2 days. And you'll never guess what she found. Shout out to my bestie. She showed up to his apartment early in the morning and waited for him to go to work, which he did. When he was done with work, she went back to his job to follow him back home. This is when she told me that he actually went to some girl's house. He didn't end up going home at all that day. This man actually spent the night at some girl's house. The whole time I was trying to call him and text him, and he did not take my phone calls. My best friend even took pictures of his car in this girl's driveway. Since I had this girl's address, I looked her up on the internet. I even found out her phone number because I paid some service online. And of course, I found her Instagram account. She had been posting on her story about hanging out with some guy. But the thing is, she didn't show the guy's face. She only showed his hand. But guess what? I recognize his hand in the picture because it has a tattoo on his pinky. So of course, I took screenshots. Later that day, my best friend followed him to a bar. At this bar, he met up with another girl. Unfortunately, I didn't have any information about this girl. I just knew that she drove a green car. My best friend followed him again the following day. He went to the beach, ran some errands, and then met up with another girl. Yes, we have 3 girls in 2 days. This girl was different because this girl was a friend of mine when I lived in Texas. And I knew she always had a crush on him, but she could never admit it. They went out to dinner and then back to her place. And again, my best friend sent me pictures of everything, so I had all the receipts. Side note, I think of my best friend spying on him and it makes me laugh. I hope you can all say you have best friends that are like that. So here's what I did. I got on the first flight back to Texas and did not tell my boyfriend that I was showing up at his apartment the following day. But guess what I find in his bed? Part 2 is up. Story time about how I ghosted my boyfriend of 5 years. I show up to my boyfriend's apartment to catch him in the act, and you'll never guess what I found in his bed. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. My lying, cheating boyfriend had given me a key to his apartment. So I unlock the apartment and make my way towards his bedroom, really quietly. When I walk into his bedroom, I find him curled up in his bed with another girl. He's holding her in his arms, totally fast asleep. And the worst part is, I recognize the girl that was with him. It was one of the girls who I used to be friends with in Texas. I walked backwards and closed the door behind me. That's when I just started to cry. I couldn't believe that he had done this to me. While I was working my butt off in LA trying to make a future for us, he was in Texas dating 3 women at once. No wonder he never picked up my phone calls or even texted me back. So here's what I did. I had printed out all the receipts I had, all the pictures of him hanging out with other girls that my best friend took while she was spying on him. I laid out all the pictures on his kitchen counter, and I left him a letter too. I told him in the letter that I could never forgive him and for him to never contact me again. Oh yeah, and that I wanted him to pay me back the $3,000 he owed me. You see, when we first started dating, he needed a loan for his car. I helped him out and gave him $3,000, which he promised to pay me. Obviously, we dated for 5 years and I never saw any of that money. So aside from him being a cheater and a liar, he was a thief. I left the note and the cards and left his apartment. I went to my parents' house and stayed with him for the weekend. Of course, my boyfriend, ex, showed up to my parents' house and begged to talk to me. My father told him to leave me alone and to never speak to me again. My dad told him that when he was ready to pay him the money. That made me laugh. I was totally crushed. I blocked him on everything, even through email. Of course, he got on someone else's phone and tried to contact me that way, but I never replied. He sends me emails every now and then and promises to pay me the money back. A few days ago, he sent me a picture of an engagement ring. He keeps telling me that I'm the best thing that he's ever had, and that he's sorry and blah, blah, blah. I kind of want to reply to him, but I know that that's a bad idea, right? Or should I just talk to him and see what he has to say? What do you guys think? Story time about how my ex broke into my apartment and trashed my entire apartment and ruined every single thing that I owned. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I sent me on Instagram. I'm not gonna lie, my relationship with my ex is terribly toxic. We actually met each other on a dating app, I know. He was absolutely charming on the first date. Second date, not so much. And third date, he was absolutely awful. But I just started falling in love with him, like literally from the moment I met him. I had it in my head that I was gonna make him a good boyfriend. Like, me? I seriously, honestly thought that he would change and just become a better guy. He quickly wanted to be exclusive, but did not want to call me his girlfriend. Oh, and he would get jealous about every little single thing. If I wanted to go out with friends, he would get upset. If I didn't answer my phone or text him right away, he would get upset. Mind you, this whole time, he doesn't want to call me his girlfriend. I work as a stylist, but I also model on the side just for some money. Well, he hated this. A week into dating or whatever we were, he told me that I needed to quit modeling. If I didn't quit modeling, that meant that I was for the streets. Because, you know, all models are for the streets. Like the idiot I am, I started passing up on jobs. I even passed up on a Sephora campaign. My modeling agency was really upset. But in my mind, I thought, you know, if I do what he wants, he'll be a good boyfriend. And maybe we can call each other boyfriend and girlfriend. My mom kept insisting that she wanted to meet him, but he said no. Now, when he told me that he didn't want to meet my mom, trust me, I put my foot down. I told him there was absolutely no way I could be in a relationship with anybody who did not want to meet my family. He told me that I was taking things way too seriously. That's when I threw it in his face that he acts like a jealous boyfriend, but still doesn't want to call me his girlfriend. So he explained to me that any girl he talks to has to be only for him. And even if he's not dating you, you still have to be only for him. Then he told me that he was dating 2 other girls. I had a suspicion, but I never thought he would actually admit it to me. I told him that we needed a break and that I didn't want to see him for a few weeks. This made him insanely jealous. He told me that I was a liar and that I was probably hooking up with someone else the whole time I was with him. And yes, I did try to convince him that I wasn't, but he was not having it. I just moved into my new apartment, which I absolutely love. Spent over $3,000 decorating it. I even got CB2 furniture. I made the mistake of giving him a key a few weeks ago. One day I come home from a modeling job and my apartment is completely trashed. Part 2 is up. I walk into my apartment to find it trashed. At first I thought I had been robbed, but that's when it hit me. It was my ex. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. The walls in my apartment were smeared with chocolate. There was literally broken glass in the entryway, so I could have stepped in glass. All the mirrors were shattered and broken. My television was on the floor, completely smashed, and there was a hammer right next to my TV. This man took a hammer and smashed my television. He did the same thing to my expensive Vitamix blender. All of my makeup was in the toilet. And yes, there was poo in the toilet too. The sink was full of kitchen condiments where he put all of my expensive perfumes. The bathroom mirror was also smashed. My expensive ass CB2 couch was full of mustard and honey. All of my couch cushions had olive oil on them. I mean, the list goes on and on. I pulled out my phone and started taking picture and video. I called the police and my parents, and my parents came right away. Of course, I called my ex and told him that I knew it was him, and he denied everything. He said, and I quote, "You're crazy," and then hung up. The cop that came to my apartment was super rude. He said that I must have done something really bad in order to deserve this kind of punishment. I filed a police report and they told me that I could sue him. So far, he does not want to pay a single dime. He then admitted to me through text messages that he got the idea from a TikTok video, and that some other guy had done this to his ex. So far, I've spent $500 just in cleaning services to clean my apartment. I'm living back with my parents. Luckily, a judge made him pay me $5,000. Still not enough. He's been calling me and begging me to get back with him. What do I freaking do? Story time about how I was harassed at the gas station. A few years ago when I lived in LA, I would walk everywhere. By the way, you guys want more of my own story time, so here we go. The year was 2016. The victim was me. No, but seriously. I didn't have a car at the time. Actually, I still don't have a car because I can't afford one. So I would take the train or the bus everywhere. On this day, I had an audition in Santa Monica, so I decided to take the bus and then the train. When I got off the train, I walked my cute little tush over to the gas station to grab a bottle of water. I went inside, grabbed my water, and I noticed this guy staring at me. You girls know when a guy is staring at you and he's doing it on purpose. Yeah, that's what he was doing. He wanted me to see him staring at me. I quickly exited and started heading toward my audition, which was like 5 blocks away. I was about 20 feet from the gas station when I hear him yelling at me. He started saying like, "Hey, do you need a ride? Do you need a ride?" And I just said, "No, thank you." And I kept walking. Cars were on the street, so I couldn't cross the street just then. So he decided to get in his car and pull up right next to me. As he did this, I could hear him complimenting my body. He started talking about my bum and other parts of my body. I put on my headphones and I just ignored him. But obviously this made him even more upset, right? Because, you know, although I did not put music on because I wanted to hear exactly what was going on. That's when he started saying that I was a bitch and other things for not talking to him. Oh yeah, and then I needed someone to teach me a lesson. Finally, I was able to cross the street and I kept walking. This man turned onto the wrong side of the road so that he could drive right next to me and continue to harass me. He started telling me what he was going to do to me if I actually ever got into his car. I knew that if I responded, it would only accelerate his anger, so I literally did not say anything and kept ignoring him. Finally, some cars were going his way, so he had to get out of the lane and turn around. But this man literally made a U-turn on the street to come back to continue harassing me. I was literally on the verge of tears, but I was like, I'm not gonna let this guy see me cry. Saw a cafe 2 doors down, and I decided to walk in. And you better believe he stopped in front of the cafe and just stared inside, waiting for me to come out. Mind you, I had 20 minutes to get to this audition and there was no late. I was going to be on time because being on time means being late. But I also did not want him to see where I was going. I went up to the girl at the register and explained to her what was happening. And I just started to cry. Luckily, she was super nice. She gave me a glass of water and just told me to sit down. Luckily, this guy didn't have any patience, so he did drive away. And then I was finally able to walk to the audition, which was like another 3 blocks away. This is why I always used to wear oversized shirts over any dress that I had. Like I have this really big button-up shirt that just hides my body perfectly, but still this happened. No, I didn't have time to get his license plate. I still remember what he looks like and what kind of car he was driving, but honestly, what am I gonna do? Call the cops and be like, hey, this guy harass me? I sometimes literally stand in front of my closet and think, no, I'm not going to wear that unless I'm with my husband. If you have any similar stories, please comment below because I know I'm not the only one. Also, no matter what you're wearing, you should never be approached like that. If you ever find yourself in a situation like that, just go into a store and wait it out. Who cares? It's better than having them follow you to where you live, you know? Just be safe out there. I love you guys. Bye. That's when I find my fiance and my roommate sitting on the couch together really snug. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. Unfortunately, I did not find them kissing or anything. I asked my roommate what she was doing there. She laughed and told me that my fiance invited her. My fiance was totally out of it since he had been drinking. That's when I pull up my phone and show them the picture of them kissing. They both start to deny it, but I'm like, how can you deny it? I have proof. My roommate told me that she needed to leave and she literally ran away. I actually had to wait for my fiance to sober up for a few hours before he could actually talk. That's when he told me he didn't remember anything. My roommate is refusing to speak to me and told me that she doesn't want to be in the wedding anymore. And I'm like, yeah, of course you're not. The only thing she said was that my fiance came on to her. My family hates him and her now. Parents don't want me to get married, but the wedding is a week away. My fiance swears that she did something to him. He's begging me for forgiveness and I don't know what to do. Please help. Story time about how my parents tried to sell me to a man who wanted to marry me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. When I was born, my family had a lot of money, but my dad was into some sketchy business. When I turned 17, my parents basically lost all of their money. My dad was in debt and owed money to a lot of bad people. He owed one man $100,000. When I turned 16, I got my first boyfriend. He was really caring and our families were friends. My parents actually loved my boyfriend at the time. But when I turned 17, my parents asked me if I was okay with an arranged marriage. I told them absolutely not because I had every intention to marry my boyfriend. He and I had already agreed that we'd get married when we turned 18. Slowly, my dad started insisting that I needed to consider it. After I kept saying no, he finally decided to tell me the truth. He told me that we owed one guy $100,000 and the only way that he would let my dad off the hook was by marrying me. He even offered my parents money in exchange for my hand in marriage. I was terrified. Part 2 of how my parents tried to sell me off to a strange man so that he could marry me. I found out about the truth that my dad owed $100,000. He basically told me that the only way we were going to save our family was if I married this man, and that he offered my dad money in exchange for me. I mean, I was actually scared for my life because this man was known to everybody for being dangerous. I couldn't believe my mom was going along with it, but she said it was the only way that we weren't going to get our house taken away. They basically told me not to worry because I could always get a divorce from him. But of course I didn't want to marry him at all. That very night I snuck out of my house and went to my boyfriend's house. I told him everything my parents said and he was shocked. After discussing it for a few hours, we actually decided to run away. I knew I had to go back to my house, but when I looked at my phone, I had 10 missed calls from my parents. When I got home, they were waiting for me at the gate. And guess what? The strange man was there. My parents casually introduced me to this man. And when I looked at him, he was about 20 years older than me. He looked me up and down and handed my dad a check. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how my parents tried to sell me off to a strange man so that he could marry me. This is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. The man looked me up and down and just stared at me. He handed my dad a check. That's when I yelled out that I was gonna go pack my stuff. Quickly packed a bag and escaped through my window. Luckily, my room was on the first floor. I ran for a few blocks where my boyfriend was in his car. Once I got in, we turned off our phones and drove an hour away. Then he told me he had a surprise for me. We got to this strange house and he told me to get out. When we went inside, there was a woman waiting for us. That's when he got down on one knee and gave me a ring. He told me that he would marry me in order to save my life. Everything happened so fast and we got married. When I turned on my phone, I had 100 missed calls from my parents. I told them what happened and they begged me to come back home. When we got there, the strange man was there waiting for me. My now husband and I tell him to leave me alone. Thankfully, he ended up leaving. A few months later, my parents were debt-free. My mom sold all her jewelry and my dad sold his cars and a few other things. They should have done that from the beginning instead of trying to sell me. It's been 2 years since all that happened and I'm still married. The strange man has tried to contact me through Instagram. He offered me money once again to marry him. I told my parents and they think we should get a restraining order. What do you guys think we should do? Story time about how my half-sister tries to steal all of my boyfriends. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I'm currently 24 years old and I didn't meet my half-sister till about a year ago. She's 22, so she's 2 years younger than I am. My parents have a really complicated past. They divorced when I was really young and they pretty much never spoke after the divorce. What I didn't know back then was the reason why they got divorced until now. When I was 3 years old, my mom found out that my dad had a child with another woman. It was totally heartbreaking for my mom and I totally understand looking back. Fast forward 20 years later, my mom and my dad started speaking again. They kind of wanted just to get over all the past stuff and just be friends. I was really happy about this because I've always wanted this for my parents. Throughout the years, I kept a decent relationship with my dad, but we were never really close. So once my mom and my dad started making up, I started having more of a relationship with my dad too. And I also knew that I did have a half-sister somewhere in the world, so I was excited to meet her. We all decided to go have dinner, and that's when I met my half-sister. I assumed that her and I were just going to become really good friends because we were so close in age and we had the same dad. I mean, she's my half-sister. But I couldn't be more wrong. As soon as we met, she didn't even want to give me a hug. My mom was so upset by it that she even confronted her and asked her what her problem was. And in front of everyone at the dinner, she told my mom and I that she had no desire to get to know us, and that she didn't even consider us family. My mom and I left the dinner and basically didn't speak to her for a long time. But of course, my dad, being my dad, forced her to call my mom and I to apologize. Of course, this was all super awkward. She apologized and we went about our lives. Right before Thanksgiving, I started dating someone new. He was really amazing. We got along super well and had tons of fun. My mom loved him. That year, we decided to join the two families and have one big Thanksgiving dinner. I knew my half-sister was going to be there, so I talked to my mom and told her to just have patience in case she said something to us. As soon as we show up to the house, my half-sister goes straight to my boyfriend and starts talking to him. At first, I didn't really get annoyed at all because I thought at least she was being nice. But boy, was I wrong. She spent the whole night talking trash about me to my boyfriend. My boyfriend kept looking over at me and making weird faces, so I went over there and asked him how they were. That's when my half-sister literally looks at me and just walks away. Then my boyfriend fills me in on everything that she said about me. She told him that I was dating 3 other guys behind his back. Thankfully, he didn't believe her, of course. But after this, she basically stalked him on Instagram and wouldn't leave him alone. She even got his phone number and started sending him messages. And the only reason I found out was because I saw a message come in through his phone. When I confronted my boyfriend about it, he told me that it was totally innocent and that I needed to get over it. And yes, my half-sister is very pretty. But I got really upset at my boyfriend and decided we needed to take a break. That's when she swooped in. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my half-sister tries to steal all of my boyfriends. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. After she stalked my boyfriend and started sending him messages, told him we needed to take a break because I saw the messages on his phone. And he didn't tell me. Instead of confronting her, I decided to call my dad and tell him what she was doing. That's when my dad told me that he was sick of us being children and that we both needed to mature. I mean, I wasn't the one stalking her boyfriend. Since that failed, I went straight to my half-sister. I told her she needed to leave me alone and to never speak to me again. That's when she literally denied everything that she had been doing. She told me that my boyfriend was making all that stuff up and that she would never do that. Of course, I didn't believe her. After a few weeks, I call my ex and tell him that I'm ready to talk again. That's when he told me that he actually started dating my half-sister. I couldn't believe it. Once again, I called my dad and told him what she was doing. And when he asked her about it, she denied having ever done that. She even told my dad that she wasn't dating him. So at this point, it was her word against mine. I decided to just move on with my life and I started dating new people. Once again, I meet a really good guy. I told him I wanted to take things slow and he said he understood. We were out to dinner one night and I decided to tag him in one of my stories. A few days later, he asks me if I have a half-sister and I said yes. That's when he sent me a screenshot of a conversation he had with her. And again, she was telling him that I was dating a bunch of other guys. She even asked him if they could meet up for coffee. I told him to block her and completely ignore her. A few days after that, my ex, who left me for my half-sister, calls me up and tells me that she broke up with him. He told me that I was right about her, that she was toxic and totally demented. He then begged me to give him another chance. Once again, I go to my dad and I show him all the screenshots of her messaging my boyfriends. Finally, my dad believed me. My dad and I both confronted her and she denied everything once again. But then, the new guy that I'm seeing sent me another screenshot. She apparently messaged him from another number and asked him out again. I don't know what to do at this point. She keeps denying having done anything. In fact, I'm almost scared of her. What should I do?